This episode of the Skift podcast features a discussion from a recent online Skift event. To join us and learn more about future Skift events, visit live.skift.com. Please welcome the Chairman and CEO of American Airlines, Doug Parker, in conversation with Skift Airline Weekly editor, Madhu Unnikrishnan.
Good morning, Doug.
Hey, Madhu, how are you?
Good. Thank you for joining us today and for kicking off the Skift Aviation Forum.
Sure. I wish you're all here in Dallas with us, but this is our DFW. But
next year,
we'll do another one of these online ones.
Absolutely, next year. Well, so this hopefully the last of these. Now, you have no way of knowing this, but you've been a presence in my life for 20 years. So from the time here at America West. So I'm really excited to start this conference with you today. So let's just get into it. Now, the industry just finished its third quarter earnings call. And the theme I heard throughout those calls was that the airline industry had reached an inflection point. My question to you, though, is we've heard that before. I mean, I think at the second quarter that people said it was an inflection point. We heard it various times throughout the crisis. What makes you convinced that this time is real and lasting?
Yeah. Okay. Well, to be clear, I don't know that any of us said it was real and lasting. So we certainly hope it is. But you're right. I mean, there have been stops and starts along the way throughout this pandemic, and it wasn't. I mean, early on in middle of 2020, we all thought it was an inflection point as we started to see people returning to travel, and then of course that turned out not to be true. What really makes inflection points are fundamental changes. The vaccines were clearly a fundamental change. And as vaccines started to take hold in 2021, we saw people starting to return to travel. That, of course, turned out to, that decelerated into August as the Delta variant spread. So another inflection point, though, now is 212F being lifted and people being able to travel internationally. That certainly is going to increase that. It's a barrier that goes to travel that goes away. And allows more people to travel. So that's those type of permanent changes, vaccines, 212F going away, businesses returning to their headquarters. Those are the events that are really going to make this real and permanent, as you say. But I don't think any of us are depending on or need this to be real and permanent right now. It feels as though we certainly have some structural changes that are taking place, and eventually we're going to get through all this. But I'm not. If indeed there's another stop and another slowdown, we're all prepared for that. But it absolutely, and you can see it in all the data. There's been a huge increase in demand for air travel. Certainly, leisure travel, business starting to come back, the international travel coming back. All those things are real and permanent. Whether they'll plateau for a while before they accelerate again, I'm not sure. But what we know is when people are ready to travel again, we're going to be ready for them.
Right. Now, you mentioned business travel, and I'm going to refer to something your predecessor, the legendary Robert Crandall, said. He said something like in the 90s that new technological innovation makes the world a smaller place and makes people want to travel more. And that's a really germane statement now in this era of Zoom, and we've all gotten used to talking like this over video. Do you think he's right? I mean, do you think business travel will recover to its 2019 levels?
Yeah, well, whether we get back to 2019 levels or not, I mean, again, to be seen. What I absolutely believe Bob was right on that. He's been proven right with every technological advance. I think back then he was talking about the internet, for goodness sakes, and people were suggesting that because it was going to be so much easier to communicate, that they wouldn't need to travel as much. And his point was anything that makes the world smaller makes people want to see the world more and meet each other more. And he's been right. He's been proven right. There's no doubt that our ability to do these types of meetings does suppress the need for some travel that needed to happen before in person, but it also makes connections easier. And I do believe over time what that's going to result in is more and more people wanting to get together. There's this as easy as this may be, we all know it's no replacement for all of us actually being in person here in DFW and having this conference. Yeah. And those things are going to happen again. And people are going to connect due to Zoom that wouldn't have connected otherwise. And they're going to want to get together over time. So, look, I'm really bullish on what's going to happen with business travel over time. And I'm I'm not worried. I don't think Zoom's going away. By the way, I think Zoom's a great thing, or Teams, or whatever you want. Any one of these platforms are great, and they're huge. They're huge advancements. But we're going to coexist. These platforms will still be in place, and business travel will still be in place.
Right. Well, I want to pin you down on something now. I mean, about business travel. So some of your peers have said as much as half of all business travel has gone away permanently. Others have said it's going to come back even stronger than it was before. And, people are going to travel a lot more. They have this yen to travel now that they've been cooped up for 20 months. Where do you fall in that spectrum? If I can pin you down on a number.
Well, I'm much closer to the bull. Certainly bullish. Like I said, 50% sounds crazed. And again, there are certain parts of travel that are going to go away. Mm-hmm. I was talking to a lawyer recently. He said, flying to San Antonio for a deposition is not something I'm going to need to do anymore. Fair enough. So there absolutely will be things that don't happen. But again, there will be all sorts of new connections made and new needs for different travel. Travel also, we're already seeing that the patterns of business travel are different. As more and more people are working from home, we're seeing, business travel, which used to be so, the patterns were, we could identify business travel, frankly, from the travel pattern. Flying out on a Sunday, flying back on Thursday or Friday. Those were business travelers. That's not the case anymore. We have business travelers flying throughout the week, on weekends, leaving on Wednesdays, and all sorts of different patterns to the travel, which are good. It flattens out the peaks. It allows for more and more types of travel. So anyway, I think we're going to get to a point where business travel gets back to at least where it was in 2019. How soon, I'm not certain, but absolutely, it's going to return. It's a requirement of business. Business is a social operation, and we all need to connect, and airlines connect us.
Well, that's an interesting point you raised there. So the patterns have changed. Are you seeing that from across the board, from large corporates to small, medium enterprises, or is it mainly small and medium enterprises that are traveling in a new pattern?
Yeah, no, we're seeing it across the board. We can see it on those that are traveling on corporate discounts. Absolutely. Again, those by the way are much of the companies that still aren't back to headquarters. So that could be part of what it is. And you may see that return to more normal patterns as that becomes more prevalent. But I think the way people work has changed permanently. And in our smaller corporations as well. I will also point out, you raise a good point. We've seen business demand come back much more quickly in our smaller corporate travel, smaller corporations, I should say, rather than our large corporates. And again, that to me is a really bullish indicator, because what that says is, for the companies that are more nimble, don't have the large headquarters, don't have large HR departments and things that are making it, that are saying, let's not open our headquarters. Those that really need to do business are doing so. The smaller corporations are traveling at a much higher rate than the large corporations. So when the large corporations return to work, I suspect you'll see that come back really quickly.
Right. Now, everything we've read about the, leisure demand has led the way, and everything we've read from AAA to the airlines themselves has said this holiday season is going to be a blockbuster holiday season. I mean, how's it look shaping up for you with the booking curve being shorter than it normally is, and what's it looking like this year?
Yeah, we're going to be busy. I think everyone's full. People are wanting to travel, wanting to get to go see family over the holidays or go travel over the holidays. So it's going to be a busy holiday season. We're ready for it and excited about it. And I think we're all making sure that we're all ramped up and ready to meet the demand.
Well, I want to ask you about that. I mean, you've had some operational hiccups recently, where which called into question whether you might actually be ready for the surge in demand at the end of the year. What have you done to sort of address those for lack of a better word, the meltdown in October?
Yeah. Well, first off, I mean, that was driven, of course, by a serious event at Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, our largest hub, where for 2 days the winds were so strong that half the airport was shut down. And it happened at the end of the month where we don't have enough, where we end up with not having the same level of reserves that we normally do. So not an excuse, but absolutely what happened. So again, when that happens, it was harder for us to recover than it usually is. Again, largely because it was at the end of the month. But what we've done is make sure that we're hiring thousands of people to make sure as we head into the holidays, as we ramp up the schedule, we have the people we need. We have more flight attendants and pilots per scheduled block hour than we've ever had at American Airlines as we head into this period. So we're well prepared in terms of staffing. That's worth noting. Actually, yesterday I had the pleasure of having our first graduating class of flight attendants since the pandemic. These were 95 flight attendants, who all of whom were hired prior to the pandemic by American. Many of them already in training, and we had to send them home in March of 2020. And these 95 flight attendants waited 606 days to become American Airlines flight attendants, and just shows you what great jobs these are, how much people want to work in the airline business, want to work for American Airlines. They're willing to wait in this job environment. People that are willing, they're 600 days later, taking the job that they were told they couldn't have 2 years earlier. Says a lot about what we do and the people that love doing what we do at airlines. Anyway, so it's with this hiring group, we now in every single work group we have new employees. We're hiring thousands of people. We're going to hire thousands of people into next year, and we're having no trouble doing so. This is a great industry, a great place to work.
Well, since you brought up hiring, I actually did want to ask you about that. I mean, several of your peers, from Bob Jordan at Southwest to Maury Gallagher and Jude Ricker, have said that it's really tough actually finding people to work at especially entry-level positions at airports and on the ramp. Are you seeing the same challenges when?
Less so. We certainly, again, for a lot of our vendors that have lower pay rates, that has been an issue. But at American Airlines pay scales, we're not having any trouble. We haven't had any trouble recruiting talent anywhere at our pay scales within the mainline airline. We certainly have had challenges that we've needed to address with some of our catering contracts, with some fuel truck drivers, et cetera. But again, we've gotten those largely addressed, and certainly don't see many issues there. But as it relates to hiring people at American Airlines, we haven't seen we haven't had any real issues, certainly in our mainline workforce.
Have you had to adjust your pay scales for some of these entry-level folks, or change work conditions to attract talent?
Not at the main line. Some of our regional providers, we've had to give incentives for pilots at our regional carriers, the true entry-level pilots who have a number of options right now. As all we mainline airlines are growing, we're taking pilots from a lot of the regional carriers, and they're just having trouble. Well, there's no shortage of people who want to be pilots. They have to have so many hours to be qualified to join. So we have had to put some incentives in place for regional pilots.
And this is a question everyone wants to know the answer to. Has the Biden administration's vaccine mandate complicated hiring or even retention at American?
No, not that we've seen. Certainly nothing on the hiring front. And as it relates to retention, we haven't had any, to my knowledge, had anyone leave. Certainly not at any sort of level that's gotten to my attention, where people are leaving because of it. It is an issue we're dealing with. We're a federal contractor. We need to have everyone vaccinated per the mandate by January 4th, and we'll do so. Either vaccinated or with some sort of religious or medical exemption, and being accommodated. We think we can do that and have them accommodated in a way that allows them to continue to work. So we will manage this as we need to. We're managing it now. Vast majority of our team is vaccinated already. And by the time we get to January 4th, everyone will be, or they'll have some sort of exemption.
Right. Now we have an audience question, and whoever asked this read my mind, to talk about the international network. Yeah. So let's move over to the network and how you're planning. Now, before the pandemic, you made kind of a lot of news with sort of the. I remember talking to Basir Raja about expanding into Africa. There was a partnership with Royal Air Maroc, and sort of seeing this as a great area for expansion for American. And some of that was put on ice because of the pandemic. Are you starting to look at that region of the world again for growth opportunities?
Yeah, that'll come later. And certainly, again, that relationship is still in place, and is in place for the reasons that Vasu said. Clearly, demand to Africa right now is incredibly low, or it's quite low. So, but yeah, I mean, all the structural pieces of our operation and the international operation that made sense before will make sense over time, as international demand comes back, and as the pandemic subsides throughout the world. You'll see, everything we had in place will remain in place, and I think you'll see our international network look much the same, and our expansion plans look much the same. With the addition, by the way, now during the pandemic, of two large strategic alliances with both JetBlue and Alaska, which will allow us to fly even more international travel out of JFK and out of Seattle.
Now, does the Justice Department's suit complicate your relationship with JetBlue?
Not at all. We're going full speed ahead, and expanding as we should. That's the entire point, is that this is good for consumers, and we're going to prove that. We're proving it every day as we continue to expand. We were, I guess, disappointed to see the lawsuit. It doesn't make any sense to us. We're going to prove them wrong. This is so pro-consumer that it's going to be very easy to prove, because all we're doing is creating a third competitor to Delta and United in New York and in Boston that's going to be as strong as they are. And without this alliance, neither of us can be. So it's a great third option, and one we think will be the best of the three. But it's going to be intensely competitive and good for consumers, and we're proving that every day, and we'll keep doing so. We're just going to keep growing it, and then we'll go win the lawsuit if they insist on pursuing it.
Right. Now, speaking of Delta and United, now another thing you'll never remember. About 10 years ago, you told me that this was just before the merger, American would never have the scale of network that that Delta and United have in Asia. Yeah. And you were going to rely on alliance partners and joint ventures for growth in that region. But then, in the intervening 10 years, the merger was done. You started expanded in Asia, and then you pulled back. And now, so I guess I want to get a sense of has the pandemic scrambled your plans for Asia? What's coming up in that part of the network?
Yeah, well, again, first and foremost, the alliance with Alaska is designed to offset that, where we did indeed have less network scale than some of our competitors. And with the strategic alliance with Alaska, we now have feed in and out of Seattle, which will support a good bit of growth to Asia. So that's what we'll use. We also, of course, already we're flying a good bit of Asia out of LAX, and that should continue. And then on top of that, we do indeed have some strategic alliances, including a Pacific Joint Business Agreement that includes our partners at JAL, includes another alliance with Qantas. And so, look, we'll be able to get customers either online on American or on one of our partners anywhere around the globe, as well or better than anyone else, and that includes Asia.
Well, at least let's sticking in Asia. I mean, at least in the near term, so China is still, basically shut down for international travel. A lot of Northeast Asia is slowly reopening. Southeast Asia is slowly reopening. South Asia, including India, is basically open. I mean, where have you rejiggered your network in response to the pandemic to Asia? Oh,
absolutely.
Can you tell our audience how?
Well, yeah. Well, again, I mean, you can see it. We're not flying routes to China as a result. I mean, we were before. When but again, those are pandemic-related changes to the schedule as opposed to permanent changes to the schedule.
Right.
So again, what I believe is, as the world recovers and as the pandemic subsides around the globe, you'll see most of us return to our prior type of international schedules. In some cases, there's less competition out there because this pandemic has resulted in fewer international competitors in many cases. So perhaps you'll see even more from the U.S. carriers than we were flying before internationally, as there's somewhat less competition. And as places like China open up, you'll see American and other airlines begin to fly there again. So that's what's really going on, Madhu. I just don't want to. I don't want to make it sound like because of the pandemic, the entire, of course, where we are today and where we're flying today is much different. But over time, to the extent that made sense before, it'll certainly make sense in the future. And things like Seattle to Asia, which wouldn't have made sense for American before, suddenly do make sense with the feed from Alaska.
Now, do you have sort of a date for when you think long haul travel will start to return? I mean, we've heard everything from 2026 to 2023. I mean, what are you hearing from your customers, from your people on the ground?
Yeah, like it varies again by country, but in general, I think U.S. demand for international travel in the summer of 2023 is going to be incredibly strong, maybe as high as it was in 2019. So again, it's still to be seen how everybody feels about global travel at that point, but certainly the trend lines would seem to indicate that as long as we continue on this sort of trend, given what we've seen in terms of demand with the lifting of 212F. I don't think it's remotely a stretch to believe that by this coming summer that people are going to want to be traveling internationally at the same levels they did in 2019. So again, that could vary by certain parts of the world, but just in general, the desire for Americans to travel abroad, I think is going to be as strong in 2023 as it was in 2019.
Can you tell us, I mean, roughly how the European point of sale bookings, by how much they went up after November 8th?
I'm sorry, and I just said 2023. I'm in 2022, and while I was thinking of that,
so after the lifting of the restrictions on November 8th, what kind of surge did you see from European point of sale?
Almost infinite. I mean, I can't give the percentage because they were so high. I mean, so I don't remember them, but I mean, hundreds of percentage increases in demand. I mean, look, they didn't have the ability to fly to the United States. We didn't allow Europeans to travel to the United States unless they two passports or some sort of emergency reason. So it was exceptionally low. It was being suppressed, and then that was lifted. So and immediately we saw on those dates, like I say, several hundred percentage point increases from European, Brazilian point of sale travel that has continued. So it came back immediately. Again, not all the way back to 2019 levels, but it's one of these classic. If you suppress demand and don't allow people to travel, one, it gets pent up, and two, when you remove the restriction, people start to travel again. And it happened the day it was lifted, not 2 weeks later. We had flights full that day. So it's encouraging. We waited far too long for it, by the way. It's too bad we had to wait this long for it. It didn't make any sense from a health perspective to not allow people to travel from Europe and to allow people to travel from other parts of the world. But anyway, stop complaining about that and be happy that's off. Anyway, it is very encouraging to see what happened when the restriction was lifted. There's huge pent up demand for international travel. And when the restrictions are lifted, the travel comes.
So I take it you're expecting a good transatlantic summer next year?
Yes, absolutely. Again, that's a part of the world that feels like in 2021 is going to feel, or 2022 is going to feel a lot like 2019 summer in terms of demand for travel.
And how have you sort of retooled your network for or what are you thinking in terms of summer 2022? Is it going to be more a leisure network, or are you going to focus on your business centers?
It's somewhat dependent on demand, but what we know is we're going to be back by the next summer flying all the airplanes we were flying before. And 2019 is our intent. We'll actually be a slightly larger airline in the summer of 2022 than we were in 2019 in terms of ASMs. That's dependent, of course, on us getting all of our airplanes delivered. But assuming that happens, we'll be even larger than we were. So so that's what we think. We're very bullish on 2022, on the summer of 2022, and we're ramping up to make sure that we're ready to meet that demand. Great.
Now we have a few minutes left, and I just wanted to. So my final question to you, I guess, is this:
Sure.
We mentioned you've been a presence in my life for 20 years, but you've also you've had basically the same job for 20 years, just the offices keep getting bigger.
Yeah.
And now, when you started your career under Crandall's wing in whatever that was, did you ever see, first of all, did you ever see getting his job?
No, of course not. And that wasn't really ever the goal. I mean, look, what I feel good about is, the reason we've gotten to this point is because we needed to, for our team's sake. America West was a great airline, but it was too small to exist in a consolidating world. So, we worked hard to get a merger done with U.S. Airways, and then U.S. Airways, when the mergers of United and Continental and Delta and Northwest got done, U.S. Airways was compromised. So we needed to do something about that. And as we did those things, I happened to be the one who was in charge of those. But it was all about getting our people to safe harbor, and that I feel really good about. It was never about us, or certainly about me. It's all about making sure that we as leaders of the airline, give our team, who does a phenomenal job at taking care of customers and each other, the confidence they needed to know that they're going to work for an airline that's going to be here as long as they want to work. We couldn't quite do that at America West. We wouldn't have been able to do that for a long time, much longer at U.S. Airways. Now we can do so. So it was one of the nice things I was able to tell those flight attendants yesterday was that you're joining an airline that's going to be here as long as you want to be here. If you want to work here for 50 years as a flight attendant, we'd love to have you. And we couldn't say that in those other airlines. So that's why we work so hard to consolidate. And anyway, what happens, by the way, when you do those things, when you end up, this is my own view, when you end up finding a mission that's bigger than yourself, your job ends up, your career actually does better. You find that you can, when working for yourself, you can actually say, I'm okay right now. But when you decide, no, I have to do this because so many people are counting on me, you work a lot harder and your career actually does better.
So what comes next for Doug Parker?
Oh, I'm gainfully employed and we got a lot of work to do. So we're going to keep working at what we're doing. I feel really good about where the airline sits today. And about the future ahead. And, it's taken us a while to get to where we feel that way. So I feel exceptionally good about the work we've done over the last 18, 19 months to ensure the company's in this position. And now we just got to go make sure that we deliver on the prospects ahead, and we intend to.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today. And I really, really look forward to doing this in person next year.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, Madhu.